Awesome. So that we can put this on our YouTube channel and our website and send it to everyone that participates in it. Welcome, everyone. We're super excited that you're here. Unfortunately, Jamie was not able to join us today. She is still recuperating from her close encounter to COVID. So, well, and Yvonne, you're still recuperating yourself, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Still.
Yeah, it's not like the flu that like after 3 or 4 days you're done with it. From what I understand, it lingers for a little bit. So I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Thank
But
you.
that's okay. Even though Jamie's not here, we're still going to talk about this through the wellness and the psychology aspect of it. So we're very excited for everybody that is here today. Um, and because we want to be respectful of your time, let's move right along. So my name is Dr. Diocares. I, along with my wonderful business partner Yvonne, are the founders of Restore Health and Wellness Institute, um, where our main focus is about wellness, health, trauma, and mental health. And so the wellness aspect of it, the wellness and health, the health and wellness, however you want to say it, um, we actually talk about a lot of different things. It's not just about mental health. And if you want to know more about what we do, we would love for you to go to our website, and we'll have our website at the end. Um, Yvonne can also put it in the chat if anybody's interested in looking at our website. But we are going to, our plan is to continue to offer content like what we're doing today, to start and or continue conversations about health and wellness, um, through not just the wellness aspect, but also through the mental health aspect of it. Because as we're going to learn today, our bodies and our minds are very intimately connected. They're not two different things, they're actually one body that have to all work together. So we'll be looking at that a little bit more. But my my part in this is the mental health aspect. Um, I've been trained, certified, and have a lot of experience in mental health. So I'll give Yvonne an opportunity to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Mariela. My name is Yvonne Mesa, and it's wonderful to be here today with you as a co-founder of the Restore Health and Wellness Institute. I feel very happy and proud to share with you an opportunity about your journey and understanding better of the mind and body connection, to find health and wellness in your life. So as a health and wellness coach, I love to help people to witness their own mind so they can make changes and reach a better health. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much to all of you for being here and this afternoon, and let's move forward.
Yeah, let's learn a little bit about how our eating habits affect our mental health. So I'm curious, and we're gonna ask people to participate through the chat, only so that we can keep the noise at a minimum. What is or how is your relationship to food? And Yvonne and I are going to talk a little bit about what our relationship to food is, but we'd love for you to share in the chat, how is your relationship to food? So the question is not what is your relationship to food, it's how is your relationship to food. So please, everyone, feel free to share in the chat as Yvonne and I share a story. Yvonne, do you want to go first?
Sure. I have to be honest, I'm still a work in progress, and it's every day is a new opportunity to improve and better my relationship, have a healthier relationship with food. I have to say that for me, my stress and anxiety sometimes take over my thoughts and emotions, and I unfortunately go for those cravings that they call me every time I feel very stressed out, but I'm working on it. And I think that the more we listen to our thoughts and our on those cravings we are able to move forward and continue in this relationship, developing a better relationship with food, but trying different aspects of managing better my stress and anxiety, and that has helped me in the process of having this improve this relationship with food.
And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today as well, right? When we eat, are we doing it because we're doing emotional eating, or are we doing it because we're actually hungry? So we're going to talk about what the differences in that those are. Before I share my relationship to food, what we have in the chat is it's connected to mood. Yes, absolutely. A lot of times, our relationship to food is very intimately connected to our mood. Um, Very common to say, you know what, I'm bored. Maybe we don't realize that we're bored, but we want to reach for some food. And then it's a love-hate thing. And we're going to talk about, guilt and shame, feelings that are attached to guilt and shame, and, you know, how these can affect our relationship to food. So honestly, my relationship to food is um, not healthy. And I know that I put on here no judgment, and this is again without any judgment. Um, could it be better? Absolutely. Am I a work in progress? Absolutely. And I probably will be a work in progress for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. But my relationship to food, um, although I am vegetarian, I have I guess to use Francesca's words, love hate um thing going on with sugar. Sugar is my kryptonite. So that's something that I continue to work through. I try and eat as healthy as possible, but when it comes to sugar, I sometimes need it. Not gonna lie. So yeah, my relationship to food, I will tell you this, there is a lot of guilt and shame related to food, and I know that that's not healthy. And that's probably one of the reasons why um, I'm probably not at the weight that my mom or my doctor would want me to be. But that is a constant battle that I seem to be losing. And so I am trying to be more, give myself some more compassion and grace. Um, and also understand that, you know what, my body has been through a lot. I've had two kids. I've gone to school for a lot of years because school was important to me. And so my health and exercise were not my priority, right? I had other priorities, not as an excuse, but it was, um, at that time, I felt like it wasn't a priority. And now it has become more of a priority because my life um, is in a different direction. I'm able to control or have more control over my time. And so I'm better able to schedule exercising or meditation or, aspects that help my health. So definitely a work in progress. For sure, Francesca, and if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please, please correct me. I'm completely okay with that. She's sharing that she's a relationship life coach and an addiction recovery coach. Very cool. And you're trying to coach yourself, go figure, to get my own self back on track with my eating habits. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Apologies.
oh,
I couldn't hear what you said.
no, Siri. Um, and just because you guys are muted doesn't mean that you can't participate. You absolutely can participate. If there's something that calls to you or you want to share, please feel free to do so. Um, this is not a class, this is a conversation. And the reason why we have the PowerPoint is just to kind of direct the conversation, but that's what it is. So please feel free to connect and share your thoughts or whatever comments you would like to. Okay, so let's look at what the mind-body connection is. When you think about mind-body connection, what comes to mind? And please share with us again if you want to unmute yourself or if you want to share in the chat. What is the mind-body connection, and have you made the mind-body connection yourself? According to what research is saying, it's the communication that our brain has with our gut. And that's really interesting because a lot of times we think that our brain is the one that directs our gut, right? when according to research, it's actually our gut that is continuously talking to our brain. And so that's kind of like the chicken and the egg, right? What came first, the chicken or the egg? In this case, it would be, so does our gut tell our mind what to feel, or does our gut feel the way it does because our mind is telling it that that's what we should feel? I'm curious about what your thoughts are on that, but according to this, about 90% of serotonin, one of the primary hormones involved in mood and emotion regulation, is produced in your gut. So if your gut is not healthy, your serotonin levels, which we definitely want and need, are not going to be balanced, right? We're not going to have enough of it. So that means that when our serotonin is not in balance, then we're not going to be doing very well, right? So again, we are seeing and we are seeing that there are more connections. Research continues to show us that we really need to be very mindful that our body is continuously communicating with our mind and vice versa, right? It's not a, okay, they work separately. What we put in our body or mind has nothing to do with it. That's actually not true, because the food choices that we make, our brain is constantly processing it, right? When you reach for something or when you're thinking about eating, your mind, and if you can connect with this, please let me know. But your mind is probably telling you, yeah, this is a great choice. No, that's not a great choice, right? Or if you're feeling sad, what do you reach for? Do you reach for a cookie? Do you reach for comfort food? And comfort food to each of us looks very differently, right? Maybe to me, comfort food is a pastry, whereas to other people, comfort food can look very differently, right? So if you do have some comfort food, and this is going to be a conversation that we're going to continue to have throughout this talk, what is your comfort food, if you do have any, and if you feel comfortable sharing with us? All right, so let's talk about feelings. How many of us are emotional eaters? And we will talk a little bit more about emotional eating. But how many of you or us can say that we're emotional eaters? I can raise my hand to this. My hand is up. I don't know if you guys can see it, but definitely an emotional eater. Yep, emotional eater, right? Um, when I am feeling stressed, what or when you're feeling stressed, what do you usually reach for? Yvonne, what do you reach for?
Whatever I find, honestly, when I just get stressed, I'm not particular about anything specifically. Sometimes I get a little craving here and there, but I mean, when I'm stressing out, really stressing out, I just go to the pantry and whatever calls me, that's what I get.
Right?
It's not about the
Chips?
hunger, it's the feeling, the urge to eat something.
Yes, absolutely. To have something in our mouth, right?
Right.
Angela's saying some chips, okay? Something salty when she's feeling stressed. Um, Francesca is saying, I have been chewing straws and toothpicks to not eat in between meals. Okay,
That's a
that's
great
actually
tip.
pretty smart. Yeah.
You gotta try that.
Be very careful that you don't get any splinters in your teeth. Okay. Maggie saying something salty too. Yes, French fries. At my house, um, we have a thing for McDonald's fries. My son calls them cancer fries because according to him, those fries are what going to cause us cancer. But oh my goodness, those cancer fries are so good. I don't know what they put in those fries, but those things are so good, especially when you dip them in like ranch and ketchup. Oh, very good stuff. And now I'm hungry. But yeah, definitely our feelings, something sweet. The other day, I have actually been craving cake for some reason. for like the past 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I can go to the store and get some, right? Or in order for me to not eat cake as much as I want to and have to go to the store every time, which means requires me getting into my car, having to put on a mask, having to deal with other humans to go to the store to get a piece of cake, I can just make cake at home. So I did. I made an upside down cake at home and I have been slowly eating it.
Mm.
I also realized that I have been super, super stressed lately, like super stressed because of business, because of personal stuff. And I recognize this because um, I've also noticed that I'm very fidgety. So I have made the connection that I want cake because I'm stressed. I'm totally aware of this. Is it going to stop me from eating cake? No, it's not. But that's just me. Yes, mug in a cup. Yes, cake in a cup. Those things are so good. I don't know if you guys have tried them. If you haven't, yes, I will recommend that you try it because those things, you just put them in the microwave for 2 minutes and you have cake. So it's really good stuff. But yeah, it seems that most of us on here have associated our feelings with some food, right? Yvonne, thoughts?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm anxious.
Yes. Anxiety. Mm-hmm.
Anxiety takes me down to the kitchen sometimes, even if it's
Yes.
for popcorn or something, chewing something.
Yeah, supposedly popcorn is a perfect snack because it's healthy and it doesn't have a lot of calories. Um, but here's what I want us to think about, and we'll talk a little bit more as we continue to have this conversation. A lot of conversations within our families happen at the kitchen table or
Oh, yeah.
in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen, not necessarily at the table, but in the kitchen, right? Um, and a lot of our gatherings happen around food. When we think about Christmas, when we think about holidays, it's usually about getting together and there being food, right? I mean, how weird would it be that we get together for Thanksgiving and not have food? I don't think it would be Thanksgiving because I think Thanksgiving is just about food and being grateful.
Trying
Right?
something good.
Right. But, when we think about Thanksgiving, we think about whatever your traditional Thanksgiving dinner is, whether it's vegetarian meatloaf and mashed potatoes and pecan pie and whatever it is on your list for a traditional holiday meal. What if those things did not exist? Would it still be a holiday? So again, just something to think about, right? And for most of us, hopefully, when we think about holidays or when we think about getting together with people and there being food, it's a positive experience. So our brain has made those connections that these types of events or experiences are positive, right? Mainly because there's food, but also because we get that social aspect that we all need to have.
But it's very interesting because when you start listening to your cravings and you go for the food and then you start eating, but you go and then you try on this new dress or blouse and then you notice it's getting tight and you don't like the way you look, then you develop negative feelings. So that's when it's a problem too, right?
Absolutely, and we'll talk about that cycle as well. That cycle of guilt and shame and stress and physical and yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. It's coming up in one of the slides.
So it's very interesting to think about the factors that influence our eating and behaviors. And you were talking about holidays, and I think about grandma when think about cultural. Remember the recipes and the great meals that our grandma used to make for us as Hispanics. The traditions that run in the family, they're very special, and it seems like we connect our culture through food and we use it
Mm-hmm.
to retain our cultural identity. It's very interesting and it's great. It's a good feeling to remember when you're eating this special meal. And I'm Mexican, so I love mole. and the taste of the different sauces, they remind you of your background in visiting Mexico and those wonderful times. So it's very special. The next factor is evolutionary, and I think about it, and is true. I mean, everything changes, and we have evolved, and so has our diet. So before, we used to harvest our food and have our little garden, and or go to the markets and or do different things, plant our food and harvest everything. Go to the these little markets and be more selective about our food vegetables and fruits. But now everything has changed. Now we're rushing, time is limited, so we just grab fast food, or we use the microwave instead of preparing a meal from scratch. We just have to be practical. And the social aspect is also influencing, changing these um, eating habits, because it depends. When we are alone, we might go for what we like, or if we don't have time, we just grab whatever. But when we're with other people, we spend more time in the kitchen. We want to make sure that people love our food, and we prepare a special meal for them to try. So that's another aspect. But like you were saying, with our holidays, we get together, we want to try different meals, we look forward to it in Thanksgiving and celebration. So we use this food when we celebrate with our family, our friends, and it makes it very special. So that's also another factor that influence our eating habits. So personal taste, individual factors, personal taste, our choices when we're trying to follow a specific diet, or when we don't have time to prep something, we'll just grab whatever. So that's also preference. The economic status. When we have a budget, we're limited. Or when we don't have a budget, we just go and spend time and spend money. We go to specific stores to buy our food. But when we have a limited budget, we just try to go and see what's on sale, what's there that we can use, bring home and make our meals. Or maybe if we have a budget to eat out, we don't have time, we just go eat out, or we want have a special meal, and we go out and have a special meal. So all these factors influence our eating behaviors. The psychological aspect, it says that when we are experiencing, like I was saying, mentioning before, anxiety or depression, people that have anxiety and depression, they report overweight, because we have these strong emotions and we're trying to manage them, and it's difficult to process them. So what we do, we just go and use comfort foods, like you were saying before. So all these aspects influence our feelings about food and eating behaviors. But what do we do after? If I am an emotional eater, what do you recommend, Mariela?
That's a good question, and we are going to be giving some tips and techniques to identify if you are an emotional eater or not. For now, I'm curious. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to read through the questions, and let us know either in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Do you feel like you eat some more when you're feeling stressed? Do you eat when you're not hungry or when you're full? Do you eat to feel better? So as a soothing or calming mechanism. For instance, when you're sad, mad, bored, anxious, etc. Do you reward yourself with food? And we are going to be talking a little bit about rewards and punishments. And then do you regularly eat until you're uncomfortable? And then do you feel powerless or out of control around food? For this last one, I don't feel that I don't feel powerless or out of control. I do get cravings, but I feel like I'm able to redirect, especially if I'm unable to feed my craving. I can do something else, but I'm not at the point where I'm feeling powerless or out of control. What about you, Yvonne? Which ones of these call to you?
Number 4, which is that you reward yourself with food. I figure when there's an accomplishment, we say, oh, let's go celebrate, and let's go have this special dinner, and we invite our friends and we want to celebrate with food. So also, yeah, if I've been craving cake or some special dessert, and I complete my goal or reach whatever special stone, so that I do use it for reward many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll talk about where that actually comes from. Believe it or not, it's not your fault that you think about rewarding yourself with food. Um, Unfortunately, it's been passed down to us. So, yeah, definitely. Francesca's saying number 3 for her mostly. So she eats to feel better about herself. Okay. All right.
We use food. Oh, yes, definitely. Many people use food as a coping mechanism to deal with feelings of stress and anxiety, boredom. Yes, of course, we do that very often. And even to prolong feelings of joy. Yes, we want to continue celebrating. So why not with food? Well, this may help in short term, eating to soothe and ease these feelings after that lead us to regret and guilt. Definitely, after I eat this this cheesecake, I feel very guilty and can even increase our negative feelings. Yes, I feel very sad. I gave up to this craving of cheesecake, but oh well. It says you aren't actually coping with the problem causing the stress. We just buffer. We just stay
Mhm.
there, and then we use this food to comfort us instead of thinking, what is the root of the problem? Let's do a little bit of self talk and try to find out what our brain has, our thoughts that are developing these emotions that are making us go for the food. And yeah, especially when
Absolutely.
I'm stressed and anxious about something.
Yes. And so there is such a thing called the stress and the mind body connection cycle. So basically, it starts off like this: we are in some type of mental distress, um, anxious, angry, bored, um, sad, scared, whatever it might be, right? And so we reach for whatever our comfort food is and take a minute, or maybe it's already in your brain, what your comfort food is. And that could be, whatever your mom made, whatever a loved one makes to comfort you. Um, it's very, if we think about it, oh, you're feeling sad, here's a cookie, right? Oh, everything will be better after you eat, right? I don't know if you guys have seen my Big Fat Creek Wedding. It was all about food,
It was all
right?
about food.
And at least being a Latina, that's what it is, right? You're feeling anything, it's about food. After you eat, you'll feel better,
Oh, yeah.
right? Or that term hangry. Are you angry because you're hungry, or are you hungry because you're angry? Which one is it, right? And so after we engage in eating that physical food, then comes that physical distress of, I shouldn't have had that. Because like Yvonne was saying, oh, now my pants don't fit. Or, we go to try on clothes and now they don't fit. Or we don't like the way that they look. Or, we used to wear a certain size, and when we go shopping, that size doesn't fit us anymore. And so then there's that cycle of guilt and shame that comes to us again, which means that we're back to being in mental stress. And then we go through the cycle again. We get some of that comfort food because you know what? At this point, screw it. I can just get bigger pants. And so then after we eat, we're back to, that physical distress of, well, I don't want to be spending money getting new clothes. My clothes should fit me forever and ever and ever. Right? Unhealthy cycle. Definitely. All right. Using food as a reward or punishment. So here's one thing that I'm still working on as a parent, and my oldest is 21. My youngest is 11, and I only have 2, thank God. Um, but doing the whole of, you have to finish everything on your plate before you can have dessert. Obviously, studies now have shown us that that is not a very healthy approach to food, right? Because what happens is we train our brains to think that you have to finish everything on your plate. And what's happening is our plates are getting bigger and bigger. our portions are getting bigger and bigger. And so, since our brain has been trained to eat everything that's in front of us, when we do that, it's not always the healthiest approach. And so, another thing that sometimes we do as parents is, well, once you finish your food, then you can have dessert, right? So then we're seeing as dessert as a reward instead of just an extension of food. And here's what's really interesting, and I work with couples as well. And I was reading a really interesting book that I don't remember the title of right now, but one of the things that it was saying, um, and I had never made this connection until I read it, was that a lot of times as women, we see sex as a reward. And so what happens is during the day, we go to work, we take care of our families. When we come home, we put dinner, we clean the house. By the time we get to bed, since sex is seen as a reward, most of the time we're too tired to engage in that reward. And so since our brains have made those neurological pathways already to see sex as a reward, you know what? If you're not feeling good about yourself, for instance, if you gave into your emotional eating, you're not feeling good about yourself, then you have unconsciously told your brain that you don't deserve the reward, which in this case could be sex. And so then we don't engage in sex, which is really interesting because we shouldn't be seeing sex as a reward, right? If you do, probably let's have a conversation about that. Um, but why are we seeing, or why do we live in a society where we have to put food as a reward or a punishment, right? Instead of just seeing food as food. If we look at other countries, for instance, European countries, this type of mentality doesn't really exist there. To them, a meal is something that you go and you enjoy, and it takes you longer than 30 minutes, right? We're very used to having 15 to 30-minute lunches here, which is definitely not enough time for us to actually have a meal. But if you go to other countries, not just European, for instance, in Argentina, and I also know that in Mexico, our lunches are 2 hours long. And you don't, maybe you spend the 2 hours having this lunch, maybe you don't, but at least you know you have 2 hours to eat your food calmly. Most of the time you eat your food with somebody else, which means that you're having those social interactions. Sometimes you have enough time to go, you know, for a walk or take a nap or whatever it might be. So that hurried mentality, that constantly needing to be doing something mentality is not there. And that, when we have that type of mentality where we constantly need to be stimulated, where we constantly need to be productive, where we constantly need to be moving and doing something, is not healthy. So, Francesca's saying sometimes she lets her son have dessert first. You know, I applaud that. I've gotten to the point where sometimes I'm like, you know what? What if just my lunch is dessert? Anything can be dessert if I say that it's dessert. It's not necessarily about reward or punishment. So, just another way of looking at food. Yvonne, talk to us about emotional eating.
Well, emotional eating is something that has called me. And when I was reading more about this topic, I learned so much because it's not that easy. When you have strong feelings and you don't know how to process them, it's a big problem because it affects and reflects in your life, and not only in one aspect, but in different aspects. And when we have these strong feelings and emotions, it seems like you stop listening to your body and you become less responsive to the internal cues that your body is sending you. And the signals when you are eating, it's hard to listen, and you just keep on eating even if you're satisfied. And those emotions, they take over, and then you start overeating and overeating. And well, this is called stress eating or emotional eating. And we use food as a coping mechanism, as a way of temporarily avoid processing those emotions and those negative feelings. So I think it's very interesting and very important to process those thoughts. So we go to the pantry when we're not hungry. We don't even taste the food. We just eat and eat and eat, and we just follow those cravings. So let's talk about those cravings.
Well, one thing about cravings is that I don't know if we've made the connection yet, but a lot of times the craving that we have to a certain food is connected to an emotion that we were feeling when we first had that food. So, in other words, let me paint it to you like this. And again, it has to do with our neurological connections that our brain has made. So, think back on the first time that you tried ice cream or something that you really like. I don't know, whatever it might be, right? It was probably something, it was a happy occasion, right? Maybe your parents took you out because they were celebrating that you got good grades, or maybe whatever it might be. So if your brain has made the connection to a certain food that you were feeling while you were eating that food, then every time that you have that emotion, then your body's going to want that food. That's why it's called comfort food, right? So for instance, if you were having a bad day and your mom made you something special, whatever it might be, maybe it was mac and cheese. Probably when you're missing your mom or when you're feeling stressed, you're going to want some mac and cheese. Does that make sense? Also, according to research, and I'm very research oriented, people in happy moods tended to prefer food such as pizza or steak. Sad people reached for ice cream and cookies, and bored people opened up a bag of potato chips. Very interesting. That does not mean that every time that you have potato chips, you're bored. But maybe about 50 or 60% of the time, maybe. I don't know. I'm not here to judge you. Just something to think about. Science has made these connections, though. Whenever we're feeling bored, we want something salty. When we're angry or frustrated, we want something crunchy. When we're feeling excitement or intensity, we want something spicy. Does that mean that Latin people, because they like spicy stuff, are always excited or intense? Something to think about. And then when we're feeling joy and contentment, it's something sweet. That's interesting. So does that mean that I'm always happy and content? That's why I want something sweet? Interesting.
Probably.
Huh?
Probably.
Probably, right? Who knows?
Especially if it's chocolate.
Yes, milk chocolate. Oh, so good.
How do we know if what we're feeling is physical or emotional hungry? Well, let's find out. Is it a physical hunger comes on gradually and can be postponed? Physical hunger can be satisfied by any number of foods, and once you're full, you can stop eating. You don't feel guilt. Emotional hunger, on the other hand, it's sudden and urgent. You have this urge to go, and like me, I feel this urge to go into the pantry and grab something. Causes very specific cravings at times, like pizza and ice cream and the chocolate. More likely to eat beyond a feeling of physical fullness. Yes, you don't stop. Likely to result in feelings of guilt, shame, or embarrassment afterwards. Yes, definitely. So it's interesting, and it's good to learn to see the difference. That way you know, and you can respond or not respond to this emotional eating.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that research has also found um, is that there is a strong correlation between trauma and emotional eating. And I can safely tell you that we have all experienced some type of trauma, and we'll have a trauma talk in this year where we can explore more about trauma. But one of the things, the most recent trauma that most of us have felt as a world, not just as a nation, but all over the world, is this pandemic, right? And everything that has happened because of the pandemic. Um, I don't know if you guys have heard about the ACEs study, the adverse childhood studies that is that Kaiser Permanente did, where they found that people that have experienced trauma have higher percentages and probability of experiencing physical ailments. Which, when we think about it, right, if we haven't made that connection yet to the body and the mind, you would think, oh, you've experienced trauma. How is that going to affect the fact that maybe you suffer from obesity? How is that going to cause you to have a heart attack? How is that going to cause you to have diabetes or, all of these physical ailments? Um, this is due to your body, especially if you have experienced trauma for a prolonged period of time. This then turns into chronic trauma. And what happens is when we experience trauma, our bodies, our brains go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? Those are our stress responses that are instinctual. We don't think about them. This is just what our body does. And so when we go into fight, flight, or freeze, if we're constantly in trauma mode, if we're constantly in crisis mode, our bodies start to think, okay, we're constantly in crisis mode, then I'm not going to have, my body's not going to dedicate the time and energy that it needs, the resources that it needs in order to digest my food properly, right? It's not going to give it, for instance, it's not going to store it in the places that my body needs. It's just going to store it in the places where it's needed in order for me to be able to escape that crisis. So again, not saying that because of trauma, your body's not functioning well. Your body chemistry has changed if you have experienced chronic stress. And we can all safely say that we have experienced chronic stress. This pandemic has been an ongoing thing for over 2 years, right? And so if we're not engaging, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, if we're not engaging in self-care practices or in ways to de-stress ourselves, then our body's continuously in stress mode, which means that it's not paying attention to our digestion.
But what can we do? So I think that it's time to practice mindful eating after all this stress that we are experiencing during this pandemic and isolation and the uncertainty and the fear that we feel. Mindful eating would definitely help. And I think it's so important that we try to tune into the present moment. Since we go to the grocery store and we buy food, the time when we select ingredients that we're going to use for our meals, or if it's just something quick and we just want to grab something, we can ask ourselves, is this going to serve your body for good health, or is just a craving? And it's time to turn off the electronics, the phone. That sometimes we're listening to our favorite show or we're watching something on TV. We turn it off and we dedicate time to eat, be mindful about what we're doing. We can start this relationship of mindful eating and practice better. One of the problems that I have the most is that I eat super fast. So mindful eating and slowing down when I'm eating, that definitely something that we need to consider, especially myself, because I do it. I always rushing and looking at the time. So I eat super fast. It's something that I am working on, trying to slow down and not to rush my meals and engage my senses in every bite I take, enjoy the flavors, observe what I'm eating, the colors. Sometimes when I'm having these different meals with vegetables, look at the bright colors of the food, or the food and the vegetables that I'm eating, the texture and the sound when I'm having every bite. I think it really makes a big difference when you slow down and you experience all this. You use your senses, and it's a different experience, completely different. And when you are doing this, you can at the same time assess how you're feeling, how your body is feeling when you're eating. Do you feel restricted, or are you actually enjoying every meal, every bite you're taking? Is your body receiving it well? Are you satisfied with what you're eating? Do you enjoy it? Do you love the food that you're eating? Or do you feel that you're being judged by your own self when you're grabbing this piece of cake or this cheesecake or chocolate or whatever you're eating? Or do you feel enjoyment? Do you feel gratitude for the bite of food that you're taking? I think it's super important to stay in touch with your feelings and constantly check in your brain and see your body. How is your body receiving this meal or this bite or this food that you're taking? The response, listening, especially listening to those signals, so that you can actually recognize when you're satisfied and you don't have to overeat, and enjoy all the whole process. It's difficult to slow down. I have to recognize that it's difficult for me, but I have to be constantly remind myself to be more mindful about what I'm eating. So what can we do when we're rushing and stressing out? I think that yoga and meditation is an excellent tool, right, Mariela?
Absolutely. And here's the thing with yoga, and I know that we have a yoga teacher as part of one of our participants today. And Maggie, if you want to jump in and share something with us, please do so. Um, you don't have to bend like a pretzel, because I definitely do not bend like a pretzel, in order for you to feel um, like you have to do yoga, or like you can't do yoga. There are different forms of yoga. There are different yoga practices that you can engage in that don't require you to bend like a pretzel. One of the most important things about yoga is that it helps regulate your breathing, and it helps to calm down your thinking, because it forces you to be in the moment um, throughout the whole practice of yoga. And again, you don't have to do hours and hours of yoga. You can do a 15-minute practice. And YouTube is a wonderful resource to find, a yoga practice that works for you. So play around, find different ones, see which one calls to you. Um, Yoga and meditation, and a lot of times yoga and meditation actually go hand in hand, but they don't have to. You can do a 5-minute meditation. Um, and I know that lately there's been a lot of apps where you can just pull up an app, and most of them are free. You can just pull up a meditation and just do it 3 minutes, 1 minute, whatever helps you. If you have an iWatch, it actually will prompt you to do a little bit of breathing, to do a little bit of meditation, to just bring some self awareness to maybe that you're feeling a little out of breath because you are upset or you're anxious, because it does monitor, your heartbeats and how you're doing. So again, yoga and meditation is one thing that you can do. Um, so hopefully in this quick talk, you have learned something new. Maybe it's made you self-aware about certain things. Um, we definitely encourage you to continue to attend our events. We're having events just about every 2 weeks about different topics. The next one actually that we're going to be having is next week. We're going to be talking about self-care as a way to self-love. But definitely this conversation was more about making that connection that a lot of our behaviors have to do with our mental health. And I'm not saying that, if your eating behaviors are unhealthy, there's something wrong with you, but maybe you may want to talk to a mental health professional. If that is something that you're interested in, please reach out to us. We definitely have a mental health team that can help you. And you can connect with us either with Yvonne or myself. And we'll help you out as much as we're able to. Are there any questions? I know, and I apologize, we went over 5 minutes, but are there any questions? Okay. I did send everyone, and hopefully you got it, a mental health check-in. Hopefully you have been able to pull it up and looked at it. I would encourage you to do this at least once a week, just kind of so that you have some self-awareness. Or maybe even when you're finding yourself reaching for those foods that you feel are unhealthy, maybe use this mental health check-in to really figure out what emotion it is that you're feeling. What are some things, some self-care things that you can do for yourself? And let's stop seeing food as a reward or a punishment. Let's just see it as food, something that we need, something that we should enjoy, something that, hopefully due to COVID, you haven't lost your sense of smell or taste or any of your senses. And, food should be something that is positive, something that we enjoy, something that, that we do and not seen as a reward or a punishment. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to spend time with you, that we were able to spend time with you. We'll be sending you a copy of this recording after we put it on our YouTube channel. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.